Hi everybody, it's Winters back for another Idle Heroes video, and this video I'd like to go over the changes that happened in this patch to each of the different heroes. First off, I'm going to just start with my favourite patch note, which is that you can now actually see the patch notes in game without having to close the game and reopen it to see them. If you come to settings and then you go to the help tab and then go to notice, you can actually see the patch notes now, and that's this line right here. So I'm going to try and go over the changes that have happened to each hero. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find the previous text on all of these heroes, so some of it I'm not quite sure on. Like particularly Lutz is the main one that I'm not too across. Most of the rest of them I can give you a pretty good guide, but yeah, I'll jump right into it. Now, I felt that it was kind of important to make this video just because I haven't actually seen another video showing the breakdown of the changes, so I thought it was worth doing. Now, I'm not particularly sure what's happened with Lutz's active, however I'm reasonably sure that it didn't have cannot be dodged. It's quite possible that the stun chance was 80% before. At least that's the number I have in my head. But yeah, it's definitely now 100% chance to stun mages for 2 rounds, and cannot be dodged. Similarly, his basic attack now has cannot be dodged, and from memory, Lutz didn't have this basic attack targets lowest HP, or if he did, it wasn't. It certainly wasn't that 130% attack modifier. So he's going to deal a little bit more damage on basic attacks, and the fact that he cannot be dodged on either basic attack or active is a pretty big change. I believe this passive just gained the plus 15% HP. I'm not sure whether they adjusted his health pool to keep his base stat the same, but his health does look a little bit higher than I remember it. His third passive has had a complete rework. It used to be I think it used to be extra damage to stunned enemies from memory. But yeah, now below 80% health increases armor break by 40%, which, keeping in mind that we have 40% from our second passive and can get 15% from the assassin tree, means we're almost hitting 100% armor break. And continuously heals self for 400% of attack for 5 rounds, which that 400% of attack is actually pretty high, considering our attack stat is reasonably high at almost 28,000, and we've got the 25% increased attack modifier. I'm going to, throughout this video, flash up the changes list, predominantly just for me, so I know what I should be talking about next. So we're going to look at Bade next. Now, Bade is actually surprisingly not too Bade. He's more of a PvE character now, rather than just completely useless. So he's had his active changed, and that's probably his biggest change. He basically just now deals a boatload of extra damage on his active. He still targets one enemy, and it's actually linked to the lowest HP. Reduces its attack by 30% for 2 rounds. Although it's only a 75% chance to deal that bonus damage, 75% is pretty high, so I'm willing to sort of consider that as, like, you know, basically just added damage. So yeah, it's basically an equivalent 650% attack modifier, which you won't see on any other hero. So its single target damage is ridiculous. His attack stat is pretty low, but as you often see with some other heroes like Asmodel, it's not so much the size of the attack, but how you use it. I know that's really cheesy, but I like using it, and I thought about using it while I was walking over to make this video. And passive 3 adjusted. I honestly don't remember what his third passive was before, because I never really considered Bade. But yeah, certainly his active didn't deal anywhere near as much damage. His third passive is not too bad, but if we're considering him only for PvE, it has limited use, because in most PvE encounters you're not going to actually lose your heroes or have their HP drop too much. Okay, so Corpse Demon. What's the shadow changes? Okay, so the Corpse Demon change to his active is predominantly just that 20% heal of total HP on active. It's really nice that they've done it like that, because Corpse Demon doesn't favour his attack, and certainly you're not going to be boosting his attack stat, because it just doesn't do anything for you. But given that we've got a nice large 30% HP modifier on his second passive, the fact that his heal is based off his health pool is actually really good. So it's interesting that they've done that, because it's the first hero where they've based it off something other than the attack stat, and you know, like with Lord Balrog and such, they just make the modifier really high, but it still feels a little bit wrong that you can't boost it by just by just boosting your HP further. Like for example, his third passive is still based off his attack for the heal. OnBao. Okay, so OnBao has had a pretty big rework. He now deals on par to slightly less damage than Faithblade, whereas he used to deal significantly less damage. Oh, excuse me. he still does the bonus damage to priest, but he's gained this 18% of foe's maximum health if the attacked foe has higher health than OnBao. His self-crit gain has gone up from 30% to 40%. However, and this is possibly most importantly, he's lost his gain 35%. So 30%. 30% damage reduction on his active, which is a pretty big change. No, actually, I'm going to go back to it. It definitely used to be 35%. Because I used to remember thinking that you could use OnBao as a tank by putting damage reduction on him, and then using his really high speed to net you 65% damage reduction for basically the entirety of the fight, assuming he's not CC'd. So his second passive, it's still gains 30 energy, but now heals self for 100% of attack instead of 50%. This was kind of necessary because with the damage reduction change, that 50% of attack wasn't going to be healing for much. But with it being 100%, it sort of it matters a little bit more. This passive, I don't believe has been changed. Now his basic attack used to have a 75% chance to silence one target and dealt 130% of attack. Instead, it now reduces their energy by 40. Arguably, this is a worse change, because obviously the silence prevents an active, whereas reducing their energy potentially doesn't. But I mean, it also has its uses. Certainly, Dark Athendol gains a lot of value in terms of her crowd control potential due to the fact that she removes energy. So my opinion's still a little bit out on this one. But generally, I think OnBao is much less of a tanky, wear your opponents down sort of hero, and more of a tanky hero killer with his change to his active. And I really like the fact that it sort of synergizes really well in terms of it deals extra damage to priests, which are heroes that are not likely to have more health than OnBao, and then everything else that has more health than OnBao receives the 18% of maximum health as extra damage. So across those two lines, you can basically assume that one of them is going to proc in most cases. Really, your only sort of examples of main meta heroes that are going to miss out on that are going to be things like probably Demon Hunter. Yeah, that's the main one that springs to mind. There's not too many non-priests that have low health pools. So all in all, I pretty much approve of the changes to OnBao, although it's a little bit disappointing that we can't really use him as a tank anymore. Okay, Malassa. Now this is another thing that I've prepared a little something for. So Malassa says basic attack has been changed. Now going through all of these, you'll be looking at it and going, I haven't really noticed anything has changed, and that's simply because quite a number of heroes almost have a fourth invisible passive, which describes their basic attack. So for that, I've prepared this screenshot. Now, it's not the easiest to see, but in this screenshot, it kind of shows everything that I wanted to show, which is that we've crit on 3 targets. This is round 1, so Malassa's only had 1 basic attack, and I've taken the screenshot just before the energy bar has actually filled up, but you'll have to trust me that I didn't use energy for the purposes of this attack. Now, if you look closely, what you'll notice is that although we've crit on 3 targets, there's actually 4 targets which are poisoned. Now, this means a couple of things. It means that A, Malassa has hit 4 targets with her basic attack. I've been told by one of my guildmates that Malassa used to hit 3 targets. So she's now going to deal a bit more damage in PvP. But it also has the notable effect that for the purposes of her passive, which says each crit has 100% chance to poison the target, this is rolled independently of the target hit. I know it's not said like that in the text, but what happens is that if at least 1 target is crit, every target is poisoned. So by hitting an extra target, we're getting pretty close to making this almost a guaranteed poison on hit, especially if we're adding to this crit value of Malassa through an artifact and such. Actually, I think I've got it on my Malassa at the moment. Arguably the best general purpose damage artifact is going to be something like this, where you're boosting both her attack and her crit. And I had this set up just so that I could show you her basic attack working. Okay, Faith Blade active and passive 2. Okay, so Faith Blade has only had a minor change to the active. It deals 160% extra against the target if the target has lower HP. Personally, this line should not matter at all. Because Faith Blade's HP is so low to start with, dealing 20% less to lower health targets which are already getting hit for 460%, it really doesn't matter. If people have been watching the videos which have been showing Faithblade, and Faithblade's been doing relatively mediocre damage, it's because they're trying to focus on boosting Faithblade's health to proc this extra damage, which is, I'm going to say, asinine. It's one of the stupidest things that I could possibly think of. Faithblade is supposed to have low HP. That's his downside, essentially, to dealing massive amounts of damage. But if you're not dealing massive amounts of damage, why even take the hero? And because Faithblade doesn't have any passives that increase his health, basically there's no way for Faithblade to get his HP up high enough for this to matter on any tanky characters. And I'm basically just going to go ahead and say any warrior will always have more health than Faithblade, even if they're not trying to boost their health in most cases. So I really don't care about this change. At worst, it has almost no effect, and at best, it's trying to hint at that people should not be aiming to use this bonus damage, and it's just there to help finish off characters that are already low health. That's my best interpretation of it. Also of note, they still haven't added the text that this active cannot be dodged, which really annoys me, because the fact that it cannot be dodged is actually pretty important. Yeah, they did say passive skill too. I'm unsure what's actually changed with this. This is the same as I remember. Possibly the holy damage didn't have a round limit? Oh, actually no, that's dropped. Yeah, it used to be increases holy damage by 40% for 3 rounds. It's now 30. That's a reasonable change, because it helps rein Faithblade in a little bit in terms of killing very tanky heroes. You can't just kill one low health hero on the first round and then immediately go into killing tanky heroes by gaining quite a big boost to your holy damage. It's probably not going to have too much effect on overall gameplay, because you're going to find that even if the opponent has like 2 tanky health characters, the chance of like hitting both of them with your active is pretty low, and therefore if you set Faithblade up right, most of the time you're going to be able to assassinate at least one target on a crit. yeah, so personally, Faithblade has had some reductions to his kit, but in terms of the way the core hero functions, I don't think it's changed. I think Faithblade is still definitely meant to be built for crit, and in most medium to low health character cases, Faithblade should be able to one-shot on a crit. And once again, if you've seen any of the videos of Faithblade going around and dealing like 2 to 500,000 damage on an active and thought that was pretty reasonable, that's them building Faithblade for health, and is it pales in comparison to what can be achieved with Faithblade. So that covers everything on our changes list. So I'm probably going to leave this video here. Once again, I'm sorry it's been such a long time since I've made a video. I've been working on something in the background, but it's pretty far from ready. But what the goal is to do is to make a simulator so that you can work out how much damage you can deal by changing stones and artifacts and passives around. When I say passives, I mean guild tech passives. Yeah, so at this stage, as I said, it's still very much a work in progress, but I hope to show it to you guys in maybe a week in its sort of basic form, and then maybe another week or two in a sort of more polished form. But basically at this point it's a spreadsheet that uses the base stats of all of the heroes, and allows you to plug in their modifiers on their basic attack and their active, and allows you to sort of simulate what damage they would do on a normal attack, on a crit, on an active crit, and then obviously weight that for the crit chance that you have to get an average sort of damage. So yeah, I'm pretty keen on it because I've only been using it for 3 or 4 days now, but I already feel a lot more informed in terms of the decisions I'm making with selecting stones. Like, to that end, I can pretty much tell you that the best case stone for Malassa is the hybrid attack and armor penetration stone, which absolutely blew my mind, because I would have naturally assumed that with such a high crit value, that the best course of action for Malassa was always going to be the crit damage stone, especially when she gets such a boost from the artifact I showed you earlier, with the attack and crit. You still want to favor this artifact even if you are taking the armor penetration stone, because it boosts your chances to poison on crit. But yeah, she actually does not need the actual crit damage because crit damage and crits in general don't apply to any form of damage over time, and they don't apply to added damage like this one, whereby it deals 50% extra of attack to enemies that are already poisoned. That is a flat amount, so when you crit, that doesn't go up to 75% because you've got a base 50% crit damage. It will just stay as that flat 50% of attack. However, armor penetration does allow the target to receive more damage from that. So the attack stone is not too far behind, but the armor penetration stone is the best for Malassa. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video here before I ramble on too much, but I'm looking forward to showing it to you guys and helping everybody in the community become a little bit more informed. Okay, thanks for watching.